Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're getting into something really special, an English explainer focused on the analysis of Dharma cultivation, or Wi Krotgan Bumpen Tam, if you're familiar with the original texts. Now, we aren't just talking about some lofty, untouchable philosophy here. We're looking at cultivation as a highly structured, totally practical roadmap to waking up. So whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just looking to connect some dots, we're going to decode what it actually takes to refine your mind, body, and soul.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with waking up to impermanence, then look at how Dharma is simply nature, cover the 5 essential precepts, and practicing the 6 paramitas. Then we'll shift into mindful eating and health before wrapping up with passing the spiritual tests. Let's get right into it.
Before we get into the heavy lifting, take a look at this lotus flower. It's kind of the perfect symbol for our journey today, right? Because it roots itself deep in the mud, but it still blossoms immaculately above the water. And honestly, that's where true cultivation starts. It's about holding on to your purity and finding your true self right in the middle of the mud. You know, the chaos and daily grind of our everyday lives.
All right, milestone number 1, waking up to impermanence and the fleeting nature of life and wealth.
So the source material hits us with this hard truth right out of the gate. As humans, we're bound by sickness, old age, and, inevitably, death. It doesn't matter how rich you are, you literally cannot buy an extra day of life. All that power, it won't extend your natural limits. We run ourselves ragged, chasing endless desires, but when you really think about it, we only need 4 basic things: food, clothing, shelter, and transport. That's it. It's exactly why historical figures like Prince Siddhartha or Princess Miao Shan just walked away from massive royal luxury. They figured out that true wealth isn't stuff, it's breaking out of that exhausting cycle of rebirth and suffering.
Moving right along to Section 2, Dharma is simply nature, returning to the normal and everyday.
I want to ask you this directly, just like the texts challenge us to. Are you seeking magic, or are you actually seeking nature? I mean, so many people come to spiritual practice looking for something supernatural. They want to predict the future, hear voices, or, fly. But the texts are super clear about this. They strictly warn us against falling into the trap of chasing superpowers.
Because true Dharma isn't about flying around. It's really just returning to a natural, harmonious state in your day-to-day life. The Source gives this incredibly grounding example. Imagine you're at the dinner table, and your absolute favorite dish comes out. Taking a scoop or two? Totally natural. But hogging the whole dish so nobody else gets any? That's way out of harmony. So catching yourself in that little moment of greed and leaving some for everyone else? That simple act of consideration is actually a profound moment of returning to your natural, compassionate state. That is what true cultivation looks like.
So, how do we keep ourselves in that natural state? That brings us to Section 3, the 5 essential precepts, or the boundaries that protect us.
You're probably familiar with these, but we have to talk about how vital their purpose is. The 5 precepts are: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants. Cultivating yourself without strictly sticking to these foundational rules, it's honestly incredibly dangerous. The texts explicitly warn that trying to hit these high spiritual states while ignoring these basic ethical guardrails, well, it won't lead you to liberation. It's going to lead you straight into the demon realm, just totally consumed by your own unmanaged desires and karmic debt.
I absolutely love this analogy from the texts. It says, precepts are train tracks. If a train goes off the tracks, it is dangerous. A lot of times we think of rules as things that just restrict our freedom, right? But the texts argue the exact opposite. Without tracks, a train literally crashes. So the precepts don't bind you at all. They're there to safely guide all your immense spiritual energy straight to your destination.
Okay, so once we're safely on the tracks, we need an engine. Section 4, practicing the 6 paramitas, the active virtues that propel us forward.
Let's define this really clearly. Paramita is an ancient concept that translates to spiritual perfections. Literally, it means to cross over from the chaotic sea of suffering to the other shore of ultimate liberation. If the precepts are your guardrails, the paramitas are your active toolkit. This is exactly how a bodhisattva operates out in the real world.
And what's really fascinating here is how these ancient virtues map out as exact psychological antidotes for our deepest human flaws. Think of it like medicine. Dana, or giving, is the direct cure for greed. Sila, the precepts, cures immorality. Kanti, which is endurance or patience, is the specific medicine to cure anger and hatred. Virya, diligence, totally destroys laziness. Dhyana, or meditation, clears up confusion and chaos. And finally, prajna, wisdom, cures our ignorance. So practicing the paramitas isn't just about being good. It's actively medicating your spiritual ailments.
Speaking of medicine, let's look at how this builds into our physical reality. Section 5. Mindful eating and health, connecting physical purity to spiritual growth.
So, is food our medicine? Well, the ancient texts remind us that diseases enter through the mouth. What we put into our physical bodies directly and immediately impacts what we're capable of spiritually. You just cannot build a pure spirit inside a highly toxic vessel.
Check out this number, 120. According to the sources, and actually drawing on both ancient wisdom and biological calculations of cellular degradation, 120 years is the intended natural lifespan for a human being. Crazy, right? Yet almost all of us fall drastically short of that. So why?
Well, the texts point out 4 highly specific destructive habits that sabotage our natural 120-year potential. First, an improper diet that just clashes with our natural physiology. Second, constant exposure to toxins and poisons. Third, severe overwork, which just drains our life force. And fourth, emotional stress, especially anger, which physically acidifies the body and wreaks havoc on our internal organs.
The source makes a super compelling argument for a plant-based diet to hit both physical and spiritual health, and it backs it up with this striking comparison. Look at this. On one hand, you've got vegetarian communities like the Hunza people living on plant-based diets and clean environments, and they're boasting average lifespans of 90 to 120 years. Then contrast that with communities relying really heavily on a meat-based diet in super harsh environments like traditional Eskimo populations. Historically, their life expectancy averaged just 27.5 years. The text leans in hard here. True compassion and true health starts right on your plate.
But hey, it's not just about skipping the meat. For true Dharma cultivation, the texts specifically list 5 pungent roots you need to avoid: garlic, onion, rakgyo or scallions, Chinese chive, and tobacco. Now, apologies to all the garlic lovers out there, I know that's a tough one, but why avoid these? Modern medicine might say some of these have isolated health benefits, sure, but the spiritual science argues that daily consumption of these roots severely aggravates your internal organs. It creates internal heat and completely clouds your spiritual clarity. They overstimulate your system, which makes meditation and emotional control incredibly difficult.
And trust me, you are going to need all the clarity you can get because of what comes next. Section 6. Passing the spiritual tests. Refining the soul through hardship.
Here is the absolute crucial point. Your life isn't just going to magically become entirely smooth just because you start cultivating. Actually, scratch that, hardship is basically guaranteed. The texts reframe life's difficulties not as some random punishments, but as vital, necessary exams. These tests are a rigorous spiritual selection process. Heaven is actively testing our faith, our patience, and our wisdom to select what the texts call the 3,600 saints and 48,000 sages. Without these exams, there is literally no way to measure true spiritual progress, or to separate the really sincere practitioners from the superficial ones.
I really love this metaphor from the text. It says, like a rock on a river, prolonged friction smooths its sharp edges. A rock on the shore remains sharp. Think about it. Every single time someone annoys you, or every time you face a massive setback, that's the water of the river rushing over you. The frictions of human interaction and worldly hardship are the exact things that polish away your ego, your pride, and your anger. If you avoid the river and just sit comfortably on the shore, your soul stays sharp, unrefined, and ultimately unawakened. We have covered a really profound journey today, haven't we? From waking up to the reality of impermanence, to laying down those protective precepts, actively using our paramitas, purifying our bodies, and finally embracing the heavy friction of our spiritual tests. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, vital question, straight from the heart of the source material. Now that you know exactly what it takes to break the cycle of suffering, are you ready to stop wandering and return home? Take that thought with you today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to guide you through our next deep dive.